أنا أول حاجة عايز أرحب بيكم وشكرا إن أنتوا قدرتوا تيجوا النهاردة في الظروف الزحمة ويوم الخميس والحاجات ده اهي. أنا اسمي محمد يحيى، أنا مدير تحرير نيتشر ميدل إيست، وده موقع تابع لمجلة نيتشر اللي يعرفها، هي أكبر مجلة عالمية علمية. وإحنا بنغطي أخبار علمية من الشرق الأوسط الناطق باللغة العربية. فإحنا بننتج أخبار من هنا باللغة الإنجليزية والعربية، وبهدف ان هي توصل للعالم، يعني يعرفوا ايه اللي بيتعمل هنا وايه اللي بيطلع من عندنا في المنطقه هنا. ده احد مشاريعنا هنا. عندنا مشروع تاني وهو اسمه نيتشر الطبعه العربيه. كريم زميلي هيتكلم عنه سريعا، هيديكوا برضو فكره عنه. وبعد كده هنتكلم على البانل بتاعتنا النهارده او الايفنت بتاعنا النهارده.
مساء الخير، انا اسمي كريم الدجوي، انا نائب رئيس تحرير نيتشر الطبعه العربيه. أنا النهارده موجود بالنيابة عن دكتور مجدي سعيد رئيس التحرير، وجوده خارج مصر مش هيقدر يكون موجود معانا النهارده. نيتشر أو نيتشر الطبعة العربية هي ترجمة شهرية لدورية نيتشر العالمية للعلوم، وهي واحدة من أعرق المجلات العلمية في العالم. تمتد أكثر من 100 سنة تقريبا لسنة 1869. والموقع بتاع nature.com بيدخل عليه أكثر من 6 مليون زائر كل شهر. ولنيتشر عدد كبير قوي من المشروعات العلميه، منها طبعا نيتشر الطبعه العربيه ونيتشر ميدل ايست الاستاذ محمد اتكلم عنها. واحنا بنقدم سelection من المواد المنشوره او مختارات من المواد العلميه المنشوره في الدوريه الاسبوعيه في الطبعه الشهريه بتاعتنا. وبرضه تقدروا تتابعوا التحديثات بتاعتها يعني بصوره اكبر على الويب سايت بتاعنا. وانا سعيد طبعا بالنيابه عن نيتشر بوجودنا معاكم النهارده، وبنشكر الجامعه الامريكيه على استضافه الايفنت، والدكتور علاء يعني اكتر من مره طبعا عملنا ايفنتات مع بعض. واسيب بقى بقيه الوقت عشان خاطر ندخل في الموضوع بتاع الندوه. شكرا.
طيب، عشان الوقت والتأخير بتاعنا فأنا مش هطول كتير في الكلام. ببساطة أنا بس عايز أتكلم عن الندوة بتاعتنا النهاردة والهدف منها. الندوة الفكرة بتاعتها هي مناقشة وضع المرأة في العلوم في العالم العربي. وضع المرأة في العلوم هي قضية احنا كمؤسسة نيتشر ناقشناها قبل كده كتير في بلاد مختلفة في مناطق مختلفة. بس احنا حابين النهارده نبص لها في المنطقة بتاعتنا، وبالذات في مصر بما ان احنا في مصر دلوقتي. واحنا بنعد للندوه كان يعني الكتير من الحاجات قالت لنا ان السيدات في مصر في العلوم واخدين حقهم اكتر من بلاد كتير في العالم. وكانت دي على كده ان نسبه السيدات اللي في المعامل كبيره، نسبه السيدات اللي في الجامعات العلميه كبيره. لكن كان في بعض المشاكل نقدر نقول عليها اللي كنا بنشوفها في النص، بعض الحتت اللي احنا مش فاهمين ليه الاوضاع دي. مثلا ان الجامعات العلميه زي الطب، صيدله، علوم، فيها نسبه سيدات او بنات كبيره قوي، لكن ما عندناش ولا رئيسه جامعه مثلا، او يعني الكليات اللي فيها عميد بتكون سيده قليله جدا. وفي نفس الوقت في معامل كتير سمعنا كلام من ان وكلام ده من رجال ومن سيدات جوه المعامل، ان هم بيرفضوا ان هم لما يجيبوا حد جديد يكون بنت او سيده، يقول لك ان هي هتكون هتحمل وتخلف وتختفي 9 شهور او اكتر، او ان هي هتكون ولائها لبيتها مش لشغلها، مش هتهتم بشغلها قوي. فلقينا بعض المشاكل. فهدف الندوه النهارده هي 3 حاجات. الاول حاجه ان احنا عايزين نشوف ايه المشاكل دي، نناقش ايه المشاكل دي، هل فعلا في مشكله ولا احنا متخيلين ان في مشكله، ممكن يطلع فيش مشكله في الاخر واكون انا غلطان. تاني حاجه لو في مشاكل نعرف حلولها. وتالت حاجه واللي يمكن اهم حاجه بالنسبه لي انا شخصيا هي ان احنا عايزين نقدم رول موديلز سيدات قدروا ينجحوا في العلوم. ويعني ده كان السبب الاساسي في اختيار البانل بتاعتنا النهارده. لان دي من الحاجات برضو اللي احنا لاحظناها، ان احنا ما عندناش رول موديل لسيده بتشتغل في العلوم. كل الناس عارفه مثلا الدكتور زويل، كل الناس عارفه دكتور محمد غنيم، لكن ما عندناش اسماء سيدات كتير معروفه او مشهوره. وبرضه عايزين نعرف ليه في المشكله دي وازاي ممكن نحلها. فمن غير ما اطول عليكم اكتر من كده، احنا ممكن نخش نبدا نتكلم مع البانelists بتوعنا النهارده. وهنبتدي بالدكتوره رانيا صيام، وهي رئيسه او يعني التشير بتاع قسم البيولوجي في الجامعه الامريكيه. وهي بتشتغل في مجال انا اعتقد ان هو من اجمل المجال، يعني من الذ مجالات العلوم، وهي المارين بيولوجي. يعني هي حد بيغوص ويطلع، يعني متعه، يعني حاجات ممتعه. يعني معلش يا دكتور انا هو مش حقد بس يعني ان واحد يكون شغله بيغوص، يعني دي حاجه يعني انا شايفها ممتعه جدا. فانا خليها تبدا وهي تقدم نفسها اكتر، وهي تكلمكم عن المشكله من وجهه نظرها الاول. شكرا لكم.
مساء الخير. Good afternoon. I'd like to thank you all for coming, and I'd personally like to thank the organizer, in particular Mr. Mohammed Yahya, for inviting me to this talk. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Rania Siam, and I am a woman in science. Basically, this is who I am as a person. I'm a woman, and I'm a scientist. And just so you would appreciate what that means to me, I have two very important days in my life. The first would be the day my daughter was born, and the second would be the day my first manuscript was accepted for publication. And for those of you who have submitted manuscripts, you would appreciate that this is definitely a hallmark in our career. I chose the title of my talk, A Lab of One's Own, because the scientist's ultimate goal is to have a lab of their own, whether it's a man or a woman. And usually you have your own lab when you're the principal investigator, meaning that you have students, you have postdocs, and you have a grant to run your lab. For a lack of a better metaphor, this is very much like being the man of the house, and this is how they say it, but there are the women of the house as well. And female scientists, as male scientists, need their own lab to resolve scientific issues. Around a century ago, Virginia Woolf wrote an extended essay promoting women to become writers at a time where the field was dominated by men. She called this book A Room of One's Own. And basically, she wanted space for women, both in the literal and the figural sense. Essentially, later, where we are now, I totally believe that we still are seeking equality with men. Yet in another field, which is science. When I came today to give the talk, I told my daughter, who's 12 years old, that I'm going to go talk about women and their challenges in science. She responded back and said to me, "Mommy, you're so old-fashioned. These things don't exist anymore." And as you have indicated, Mohammed, does it actually exist? Do we no longer have a gender inequality issue in science? Are men and women treated equally in science and given the same opportunities? Let's look into this. The same book, A Room of One's Own, states that a woman must have money and a room of her own, quote unquote. Similarly, women in science must have money. Money is in the form of research grants, and a room, or actually multiple rooms, which is our lab, in order for us to become independent investigators. I still believe that history keeps repeating itself, but in different forms. Can we be so backwards that we say that science is dominated by patriarchy? Is it only in women's head, as I'm sure a lot of you have heard? I have personally heard it several times. Do we even have a problem? Or is the problem long gone? One of the books I read that has an entire chapter literally discussing it's all in your head or in our head is entitled Outrageous Practices, How Gender Bias Threatens Women's Health. This addresses three major fronts: a bias against women as patients, a bias against women as doctors, health practitioners, medical scientists, which is what we're discussing today, if it exists or not, a bias against women as medical research subjects. The book examines how gender discrimination manifests itself in hospital physicians, medical school, research lab, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I can give you an entire list of this. Although this book was published in 1994, up to this point, it's actually quoted by several authors. So, before I move on with all this all in our head issue, I would like to ask for 5 volunteers. 5 volunteers that, okay, let me first start with a volunteer whose native tongue is English. Do we have anyone? You know it, because, do we have, okay, how about 5 who, or 2 who are fluent in English? Nuran, can you please come up? Do we have someone else? I can. Please. Oh, okay. Mahira. Can we get one gentleman?
You have 2 or 3 volunteers?
I want 5, actually. So you can come. Do we have any gentlemen? You know it. English.
I'm not a gentleman. I'm just a guy.
Okay. Sarah, can you give each one of them a paper? I would really like everyone to be quiet for the next minute. We're going to time this. I'm going to show a riddle. And I would like you to write down the answer to the riddle. Okay? Okay. So maybe just stand on the sides. No, or different sides. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, can you stand in the middle here, please? Yes. We want to make sure you're not cheating. Okay? Okay. So, please, total silence till we solve the riddle. And ladies and gentlemen, please write down your answer, fold it, and hand it to Sarah. Okay? And don't show your answers, you know. It's okay. Thank you. A father and his son are in a horrible car crash that kills the dad. The son is rushed to the hospital. Just as he's about to go under the knife, the surgeon says, "I can't operate. That boy is my son." Explain. Did you know it? Did you hear it before? No, no, no. Okay, your time is out, pens down. Thank you. Thank you very much, our volunteers. Thank you. Did anyone? All right. Okay. So I'll read the riddle again. A father and his son are in a horrible car crash that kills the dad. The son is rushed to the hospital. Just as he's about to go under the knife, the surgeon says, "I can't operate. The boy is my son." So we had 5 volunteers. The answer to one would say, the surgeon is the boy's godfather. The boy just looks like him. I don't know. Okay. Oh, there's another surgeon, okay. And one got it right, who said the surgeon was a woman. Okay? So the answer is, the surgeon is the mother. We all overlook the fact that the surgeon could be a she. Don't feel bad. I also didn't get it right. In fact, you're the second person I know who got it right. Okay, okay. So actually, I didn't make this riddle up. This riddle is part of a research study that was conducted by a psychology professor, Wapman and Bell, at the University of Boston. They did a study on 197 Boston University psychology students and 103 children aged between 7 and 17 from a nearby camp, which is Brooklyn Summer Camp. Even young people and self-described feminists tended to overlook the possibility that the surgeon in the riddle was a she. In both groups, only a small minority of students, 15% of children and 14% of the Boston University graduate students, came up with the mom's the surgeon answer. The researchers indicated that the life experience that might imply that the mom is the surgeon, quote unquote, had no association with how one performed on the riddle. For example, the Boston University student cohort, where women outnumbered men 2 to 1, typically had mothers who were employed and were in fact doctors. So whether you believe it or not, if you didn't get this riddle, and if the majority could not get this riddle, then we do have a gender bias in our head, and that includes my head. So, but there is definitely an element of inequality. I mean, I've had so many bizarre answers. Maybe the mother was had an affair with another man, and then we've been through this, and so. However, I totally believe that there is an element of inequality. It exists and persists. I don't think we even realize that inequality exists, and that's why we're going to sit and negotiate this for so long. But you've seen the response to the riddle. Not only women discriminate against women, not only do men discriminate against women, women discriminate against women. And for those of you who've experienced women discriminating against women, it's pretty fierce when this happened. So some of you may relate to this, what you might think minor. I have ran into this in the workplace so many times. If a woman at work would say, "I'm sorry, I can't stay late for the meeting because I'm picking up my kids from school," you'd get the usual grin and rolling of the eyes, implying that she can't get her family life and business life organized. However, if a man states at work, "I'm sorry, I can't stay late for the meeting because I'm picking up my son," everyone says, "Oh, he's so cute, he's so nice." And my own mother, when I call her up and say, "Mom, I'm actually going to be away next week, I'm going on a conference," she would say, "Oh, poor Salma," that's my daughter, "you're never around for her. God protect her during those difficult times." On the other hand, when my daughter's father states that he's going away for a couple of months for an important business trip, my mother, not his mother, my mother would say, "This man works hard, God bless him." So our attitude towards women and what we expect of them is unequal. Inequality will persist if we do not change this attitude. We know in the US that there's a wage gap. I'm sure you all are aware of it. In the US, full-time working women earn 77 cents for each $1 a man makes. I am not aware of wage gaps in Egypt. I know I get paid as much as my male colleagues with the same credentials. But we can ask so many questions to help us answer if there is any equality. How many male versus female are science graduate students? As you have stated, we have several female graduate students. In fact, my group has more females than males. In our graduate program, we have more females than males. In my department, which is the biology department at AUC, we have 3 females and 4 male faculty, which is a good ratio. However, I'm the only chair of the department, the only female chair of the department in the School of Science and Engineering, which has 10 different departments. Okay, let's ask another question. How many males versus females are on the editorial board of renowned peer-reviewed science magazines. I went and tried to check several of them to look at the ratio of male to females on the editorial board. And one astonishing result I have is that if you take PNAS, for example, the Proceeding of National Academy of Science, there are 198 members of the editorial board in 34 different science disciplines. 24 of these members are females. That means 24 out of 198, that's 12%. We can keep asking different questions and try to see if this exists or not. There is a problem. It's not because women aren't good in science or don't like science, as I've stated. We have more female graduate students than male graduate students. It's more that they get trapped somewhere along the way. There seems to be some sort of bottleneck in their path. And if we don't help them, we're not helping society. We will either select for women, this is evolution, we will select for women that end up with a career and no family or even a personal life, or women who will not work. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. If a woman decides to be a stay-at-home mom, that's fine, but it has to be her choice and not inflicted by society. So I was thinking of this, and as I was reading one of my papers, I'm a microbiologist by training, so I read things about bacteria and how bacteria evolve and damage and undergo evolution. And this is a model where damage is a function of amount of damage a mother cell receives at birth and the amount of damage accumulated over time or environmental factors. So if we apply to this and to scientists, women and men, our scientific outcome would be the sum of the scientific capability you're born with and the science experience and knowledge, etc. So we're definitely starting on the same footsteps here when it comes to males and females. But it comes to the fact that there are different environmental factors that challenges women. For example, we all have challenges in life. Men and women have financial problems which could hinder their science progress, whether in their professional life or in their personal life. And that would definitely hinder how they evolve in science. However, women are exposed to other factors. Let's see what sort of factors. Let's say cultural factors. Women are expected to get married and have babies at a certain age. I would like to point out, though, I've worked in 3 places in my entire life: Canada, the US, and Egypt. And I can tell you that this is a problem internationally. Several other societies also measure women's success based on this. However, I do think that we have more societal constraints than other women. For example, traveling for females and attending conferences, especially young females, is a problem. I personally wasn't allowed to travel, except if I was married. So when I was a younger scientist, I wasn't allowed to travel. Fortunately, and luckily, a lot of my graduate students are not faced with this. However, I must say a small percentage of them still have problems attending conferences and going on internships abroad. And so this is definitely a societal constraint. The other thing is biological factors. Women do have a biological clock. There's no question about it. I can't have a baby at 60. Men can. So there's always, and people are going through so many discussions on this, there's a biological clock and there's a tenure clock, and they're both ticking. So how does that work? And unfortunately, more women do get harassed than men in the workplace, etc., etc. We can give so many factors that actually will contribute to this environmental constraint that ends up with decreasing the progress of women. We therefore should eliminate those factors and therefore increasing the productivity of women in society. I will present to you some aspects of this negativity in science that hinder female scientific progression. For example, one of the most interesting sites, it's a new site that currently published by a popular newspaper, is called Academic Anonymous. Recently, or actually last week, they published an article entitled "Sexism is Driving Women Out of Science." In this article, the anonymous author indicates that she's a scientist who has heard several remarks from male senior investigators and faculty as there really should be a rule against women having children in science. Well, I'm not hiring her. She was on maternity leave. Sorry about all the women in this lab, but at least they're good to look at. I can definitely relate to these comments. After completing my PhD, I decided to join a prestigious lab at the Scripps Research Institute in La Jolla, California. Beautiful place. And I worked with a leading scientist in the field on microbial physiology. After I was younger then, much younger then, and at that time, I had lots of insecurities regarding my science and what can I do and whether I'm actually could balance between having children and working at the same time. And for any working woman, this is a struggle that we go through. It's always in our head. Are we doing our job properly? Are we taking care of the kids or not? But at the end, I'm telling you, you don't have to be perfect. Just do what you can and it'll work out. But when I became pregnant, at the time I was a postdoctoral fellow, I informed my advisor that I would be having a baby. And my advisor attitude totally changed towards me. He never indicated that I shouldn't have a baby. Obviously, it's the USA. People have to be extremely politically correct when they say things. But I'll give you two examples of the difference in behavior that I encountered at the time. Everyone in the lab were called by their first name. So I was Rania, he was Jim, etc. He, after this incident, called me woman. He would call me woman. And I told him several times not to call me by this name. He'd answer me saying, but you are a woman. And you're even having a baby, so you are a woman. And it went on and on. I have a list of things which I actually reported to the Institute. And decided to leave the lab. I was very fortunate to find another lab to host me. In this case, it was a female scientist, another renowned scientist, but she was a female, Susan Forsberg. And I continued my postdoctoral fellowship. However, the case was closed against this because it wasn't only me that came up and indicated that he had a lot of sexist behavior, but we all had insufficient evidence. And if you've ever been involved in things like that, this is always how it ends up. There's insufficient evidence. They have to be caught red-handed. I'm not sure how you can do that, but you know. Okay, so I am a woman, as you can see, and it took me actually a long time to accept that. When I was younger, I would only wear pants to work and suits with trousers, and would never wear jewelry or high heels because I thought that if I would wear a skirt, I wouldn't be taken seriously. Now, I'm the chair of the department, I'm over 40, and I'm very confident with who I am, so there's a change, but it wasn't like that from the beginning. So I do understand what the struggle for women and how they need to prove that they're equal to men, but you are not men. You do not need to look like them. You do not need to act like them. You are who you are. They will accept it. So even when I used to go to meetings initially, it was actually very interesting because the meetings I go to are usually predominated by men. And every time I would start saying something, I get interrupted. Men have coarse voices and they interrupt as you're talking. And I would say things, but I don't think they even heard me. It was more like background noise, you know. So it doesn't matter. Just keep repeating yourself. They will eventually hear you. Let them hear you. Say things over and over. And be yourself. You are who you are. They will accept it, and you will succeed if you work hard. At the end, all science is about is your experiments working and publishing. And you are a woman, be very proud of it. And don't hide it, you don't need to. of course, ladies and gentlemen, science is really expensive, and we need to work very hard for science and to establish a lab. For example, one of the equipments we have in our lab is a genome sequencer. This costs around 350,000 US dollars. If you need enzymes to do molecular biology analysis, it will cost around 1,200 US dollars. If you're a female and you like shopping like myself, designer business suits cost around $1,800. So things are expensive, but the joy of being in science is actually priceless. There are things money can't buy. Thank you.
شكرا يا دكتور. I found this inspirational عن نفسي. طيب عشان نفضل مكملين على طول، رحاب اتفضلي. انا مش هتكلم يعني عشان هم يعني سيدات، ما اقدرش اتكلم عن موضوع السن، بس رحاب من الباحثات الاصغر اللي معانا، وهي هتتكلم عن تجربتها هي. واعتقد ان تجربه رحاب وساره هتكون ممكن تكون رول موديل لناس كتير هنا، ممكن يهتموا يسمعوها، يشوفوا التجربه مشيت ازاي معاهم. اتفضلي يا رحاب.
أنا الأول عاوزة أشكركم كلكم إن أنتوا جيتوا هنا، وعاوزة أشكر محمد إن هو he organized this event. أنا اسمي رحاب عبد الله and let me introduce myself first. I بشتغل research assistant في الجامعة الأمريكية، وخدت ال undergraduate degree بتاعتي من مونتانا State University والماسترز مع دكتور رانيا من ASC. And right now I'm looking for a PhD to complete my science career. And even though I'm a scientist, I really like art, and I wanted to start by sharing this painting with you. It's a painting by Raphael. It's called the School of Assen, and the painting is based on it's about philosophy. So the subject of the school is philosophy, and you can see a lot of philosophers, Aristotle, Plato, and so on, but most importantly, you can see this stunning and amazing woman looking right at you. This is Hypatia of Alexandria, and I don't know if all of you know it, but she's an amazing woman, and I really like her. I think she's one of my role models. She is an Egyptian mathematician and astronomer, and a philosopher as well, and she was admired during this time, during her time for her science and virtue and dignity. And sadly, she was brutally tortured and murdered because of a political jealousy between the governor بتاع الإسكندرية وبishop of Alexandria اسمه Cyril. And she, as I told you, I think she's one of the most amazing scientists. And that's why I want to start my talk by sharing this quote that she have wrote. Reserve your right to think, for even to think wrongly is better than not to think at all. And أنا الtalk بتاعتي صغيرة. I will give a small introduction, then the social challenges that I have faced, me and my friends, and then just a concluding remark. So, as Muhammad said, احنا في مصر عندنا statistic عالية جدا compared للعالم في البرسنتج بتاعة الساينتست في مصر، الwomen scientist في مصر أو الفيميل scientist في مصر. في مصر 42% من الريسيرشر are women. However, compared to North America and Europe, it's 32%, while the world average is around 30%. And then in academia, academic position, we have around 44% as are women compared to 36 in France مثلا و 33 in Germany. And انتوا لما اي حد يبص على الستاتستيك دي هيقول احنا ما عندناش مشكلة، طب ما الwomen اهم they are almost 50% of the position. بس المشكلة الوجه يعني الوجه الآخر للعمر أو the problem is in the majority of these position اللي بيبقوا فيهم الجونيور ساينتست التيتشنج اسيستنت ريسيرش اسيستنت and so on only 20% of full positions are of professorship are women and so ده الانديكيشن بيدينا ان احنا في ستات كتير interested ان هم يشتغلوا في الساينس بس دايما بيقفوا وعشان كده there is a very small percentage of full professors. We'll talk about why and what are the challenges. من وجهة نظري one of the most important challenges social expectations والفاميلي. أنا بس عاوزة أسأل لأي بنت هنا أكيد كلكم سمعتوا الكلام ده. البنت ملهاش غير بيتها وجوزها بكره لما تكبري هتندمي الشغل هيعمل لك ايه لازم تخلفي وهتعرفي ازاي هتعرفي توفقي ما بين بيتك وشغلك كل الكلام ده احنا بنسمعه and it's actually frustrating السوسايتي بيحط ان احنا كل المطلوب من البنات او الستات ان هما they get married and they have a child and they care for their child and don't get me wrong and I'm not saying that women should not get married no marriage is very important for everyone it's very important for males and females but it should not be something that stop us from work or science the problem also that we do not appreciate women who cares about her work and actually the society portray a woman as self-centered and not a marriage material and so on so we are brought up احنا بنكبر ان اهم حاجه في حياتنا ان احنا نتجوز مش مهم اي حاجه تاني ودي انا شايفه ان هي مشكله it's a very big problem for women to it destroy our image and what we are capable of and it kills our ambition and creativity and yes this happened with me the other problem again it's ان احنا to pursue career برا مصر science is one of these fields that need we need to move and so on والمشكلة ان في ناس كتير وفي بنات كتير بيبقى عندهم مشكلة ان هم they cannot travel and this was not a problem for me I have an amazing family who supported me to travel to get my undergraduate degree and now is supporting me to travel to a PhD بس أنا عندي ليا أصحاب كتير that have this problem and again this affect our education and our experience and it make us we don't have enough skill to the male that are working with us يعني let's face it لو في حد كان عامل PhD بتاعته في ماكس بلانك مثلا ولد وانا بعمل البي اتش دي بتاعتي في جامعه القاهره واحنا الاثنين بتقدم على faculty position اكيد they will choose him because he is more he have more qualifications and they wouldn't be blamed اخر حاجه انا ما اعرفش اذا كنتوا you will think that this is a challenge or not but I think it is ازاي الميديا بتبورتري الفيميل ساينتست ودي كانت من الحاجات اللي خلتني افكر وانا صغيره should I اروح كليه علوم ولا لا واكمل في السكه دي ولا لا I will give you examples I don't know if you remember her حكايه ميزو بالظبط نفيسه دايما in general الساينتست بيبقوا بيبينوهم ان هم nerds where they don't have any social life and they don't have anything beside their work. More specifically women هنا نفيسة كانت she's a scientist and she was very naive and so on وكل الفكرة بتاعت التمثيلية ان ميزو كان بيجري وراها عشان ياخد فلوسها بس الفيجر الثانية دي اسمها جميلة اسمها حكاية جيمي this is a new movie and it's story بتاعت الموفي كلها ان هي بنت برضو naive anti social and so nerdy وكده وهي she loves someone في الجامعة وعاوزة تبقى حلوة she invented a chemical somehow to make her pretty and so on المشكلة ان دي حاجة كوميدي واحنا كلنا ممكن ننبسط لما نتفرج على حاجة زي دي بس I think this affect us negatively. At first it affect أي بنت صغيرة عاوزة تبقى scientist. When she watch something like this, she don't want to be like this. And it's the problem. الحاجة التانية كمان إن هي it give a hidden message to the society that women scientists are that women in science أو female scientists are very are not attractive, they are antisocial and so on. وبصراحة this is something that I've never seen. And by what I'm يعني من الناس اللي أنا شايفاهم دلوقتي وللبانل أكيد we are يعني very attractive and ما أعرفش مش عارفة why did they come up with this. بس this is my concluding يعني ال conclusion. I think to improve this we need to have more role models to make small girls interested in science. We also need to have a better representation of female scientists in the media. We should enhance and support female scientists. L'Oreal and UNESCO عملوا award للwomen in science to improve their to يعني make women more interested in science. And at the end, even though we face challenges, we are getting better. يعني في الوقت بتاعي أحسن من الوقت بتاع مامتي وكده. And I believe that it will be much better. وفي الآخر I don't think that we are the only people who are facing problem in Egypt. I think everyone is. So that's it. Thank you.
شكرا يا رحاب. انا بس عايز ارحب بدكتوره نجوى البدري من مدينه زويل، هي لسه واصله دلوقتي. يعني هي تعبت معانا جدا، هي جايه من المطار ستريت ويعني كان في لخبطه في الطريق كتير، ف thank you for being able to make it today. سارة you're up next. برضو سارة هتتكلم عن تجربتها، وبعد كده دكتور نجوى you can take the final word.
Let me start with introducing myself. My name is Sarah Srag. I'm graduated from Faculty of Pharmacy in 2006, and I joined the faculty staff for 4 years. And in 2008, I joined the American University in Cairo, and I had my master's degree in 2010, during which I went to Dallas, Texas, and I did my research thesis there. And in 2010, I had my master's degree, and in the same year, I joined the PhD program, and now I'm working in Harvard Medical School for getting my PhD. Yeah, I'll try to start in Arabic. زي ما كل الناس قالوا إن في مشاكل كتير في الساينس، و actually الكارير باث بتاع الساينتست is very hard، حتى سواء للرجاله او للستات. بس الست دايما بتلاقي obstacles اكتر من الراجل in every and each step في الكارير بتاعها. ولو في ناس حتى لسه شاكه ان مثلا ان دي مشكله حقيقيه او لا، if we look at the statistics هنشوف ان still females who work with PhDs are very low compared, the percentage is very low compared to the males even till 2008. في ناس طبعا السوشيال ستيغما بتقول ان ان البنات، مش مصر بس in general all over the world، ان المصريين ان البنات سوري are less competent، يعني اقل ذكاء او اقل شطاره في الساينس او في الانجينيرينج. But if we have a look at the PhD holders in science and engineering, for women they're almost 50%. فعندنا تقريبا نص الناس اللي معاهم PhDs في science و engineering بنات. بس المشكلة جاية منين؟ المشكلة إن مع إن في تقريبا 50% أو 45% معاهم PhDs، 26% بس apply for positions with their PhDs. Although 26% only apply, but they are more likely to get job interviews and job positions. So we'll find 28% and 34% getting the job and offers, although only 26% apply. This rules out the concept that women are less competent than men in science or engineering. Also, if we look at the tenure percentage, بنلاقي الستات بيجاتوا البرسنتج بتاعت الستات اللي بيجي لهم يعني بياخدوا tenure او تثبيت في الشغل as scientists are even more than men. But the problem is the low number of applicants. They apply less, but the percentage of those who get tenured are even more. طب السؤال ليه بيابلايوا لس؟ يعني ايه المشكله؟ طب هم شطار وحلوين، طب ليه بقى اللي بيحصل؟ اللي بيحصل ان احنا لو جينا عملوا statistics كده they compared if they have children or not. فلما بيلاقوا الستات ما عندهمش children او ما عندهمش plans ان هم يجيبوا children, it's almost comparable للميلز. الاثنين قد بعض تقريبا after PhD. بس when they decide to get kids or if they already have kids, this affects women badly. Like it clearly doesn't affect men, بس الستات اللي هم بيبقى عندهم kids او عايزين يجيبوا kids بيأثر قوي على البرسنتج بتاعتهم compared للميلز. طب ازاي بقى how these innocent creatures create such a problem؟ المشكلة عندنا في اولا امريكا هي تقريبا اكبر مصدرة للعلماء في العالم و they have very strict rules for females getting kids. فبنلاقي ان في USA بيدوا 12 weeks only and unpaid. فكل ست is allowed to stay مع newborn 12 أسبوع بس, and then she has to come back to work and she cannot get any time out. compared لمصر طبعا بيدوا 3 شهور fully paid, بعدين 6 سنين which is like يعني it ruins her career بس whatever. 6 سنين طبعا برضو is too much يعني, we don't have to overdo it يعني ممكن سنة is enough أو 2 years at least, but anyway we appreciate the family. فعلا اوكي, it's news to me but fine. طبعا احسن حاجه دلوقتي against ال gender bias is Europe. Actually Europe is developing now towards eliminating the gender bias. For example في السويد بيدوا الكابل الاثنين بيدوا both the dad and the mom 16 months, ف they can divide it according to everyone's يعني هو فاضي قد ايه. فور اكزامبل لو الست عندها شغل ممكن تاخد شهرين, لو الراجل يكمل الباقي. فطبعا this is much better. يعني it's against طبعا the gender bias which is good. فنلند بيدوا الراجل he has to take 3 months off غصب عنه, لو ما خدهمش both the couple lose it. يعني the couple lose the whole thing. فده actually بيشجع ان يبقى في حاجه اسمها paternity leave مش بس maternity leave. فطبعا people are smirking here and laughing but this is what it happens in Finland and in Europe, which is something very good for supporting women. So, the problem now يعني هل المشكلة إن بس الفيميلز مش بيأبلايوا لو عندهم family commitments؟ actually مش دي بس الفكرة, كمان المشكلة في الهايرنج. أنا أعرف scientists وساينتست كبار including women scientists, they prefer a male applicant, they prefer a woman who doesn't have any family commitments يعني single women مثلا rather than family committed women. وin my case يعني أنا بشتغل في لاب كبير جدا في هارفارد و I saw this case in front of me. كان في حد وبيبص في CVs he actually recruited people for interviews, بس في واحدة عجبته بس هو مش عارف she has a boyfriend ولا لأ because she might get pregnant soon وتسيبه زي اللي سابته قبلها, لأن he had an incident إن كان في بنت شغالة معاه و she got pregnant. وطبعا احنا عارفين التراتوجينيسيتي دي مشكلة كبيرة في الساينس يعني, غير كل الشغلانات التانية مشكلة البريجننسي إن واحدة تبقى pregnant وتشتغل في لاب. This is very hard especially in our field. هو he tried to make sure ان البنت دي ما عندهاش boyfriend او حاجه, فحتى خلى واحده تانية تسالها indirectly يعني do you have a girlfriend, are you moving with someone, عشان يعرف انها كانت, and he made sure ان هو يركروت واحده مش single girl. فطبعا والمشكله ان دي ده مش فكر الرجاله بس, also women scientists do the same. So the other question يعني هل هي مشكلة الأطفال بس؟ According to the neurobiologist Jennifer Raymond قالت إن لا, الأطفال حتى مشكلتهم ممكن تتحل بالpolicies أو الgovernment implement new policies أو كده, بس المشكلة actually in our minds زي ما قالوا, هي زي ما دكتور رانيا قالت وزي ما رحاب قالت, إن المشكلة في unconscious gender bias in our heads. هي دي المشكله. وللاسف الجندر بايس ده في الفيميلز كمان وفي فيميل ساينتستس كمان. فايتس نوت اونلي اباوت ميلز، يعني ان هم they tend to be to have gender bias. المشكله ان in our minds as a society we grow up with this bias. انا برضو one of my experiences يعني I would like to share with you ان انا وانا بقدم على لاب ناس كتير منهم scientists women scientists قالوا لي ما تروحيش لاب بتاع الدكتوره عشان دايما بيبقوا مجانين. ف is it true? Actually it's partly true. مش هكذب عليكم لان للاسف we have a male dominated society او scientific community. فعشان الست to be taken seriously and to stand out and to succeed in science she has to act crazy يعني she has to act like a man and which is crazy. So she has to be bold and competitive. وللاسف these qualities are not accepted for a woman in our society, especially in our societies, everywhere of course. بس in Egypt إن في ست تبقى شجاعة جدا أو أنا عايزة كده بيقولوا البنت مجنونة بقى وفكك منها وكده. فطبعا something which is even worse in Egypt and the Middle East. برضو احنا قد ايه بنربي ولادنا ان هم البنات ان هم يبقوا ريسك تيكرز او سيلف كونفيدنت. يعني فور اكزامبل انا كنت في الكليه في عين شمس صيدله وبعدين اي تراي تو ريزاين، كنت عايزه استقيل عشان اروح. كل الناس قالت لي طب لو ولد ماشي لكن انت تستقيلي ليه؟ يعني اتس ريسك تيكينج، خلي الشغلانه واسمك الدكتوره راحت والدكتوره جت. ف people don't actually advise you to be a risk taker. وبرضه to have self confidence ده عيب، يعني دي حاجه عيب. حتى دايما يعني يقول لك لما تقابل ناس كبار او لو هتتجوز او كده لازم تحاول تبين ان انت مؤدب وهادي وما ينفعش تبان ان انت واثق من نفسك. دي شتيمه اكشلي، يعني لو حد قال دي واثقه من نفسها يعني كانه بيشتمها. ف we should start changing يعني how we look at girls. one of the scientists actually something it's a nice story قالت وهي بتربي بنتها لما بتخرج من الفصل مش او من المدرسه مش بتقول لها what did you learn او خدتي ايه النهارده، بتقول لها how many questions did you ask، يعني سالتي كام سؤال في الفصل. هي she makes sure that she's bold enough to ask and she's bold enough and self-confident enough. I think it's a good thing to start thinking of while we raise our daughters. This is a comic from PhD Comics. It's actually funny. I'll let you read it for maybe a few seconds. It shows that the women, the problem is every woman represents the whole womankind. She doesn't represent herself. فلما when a woman succeeds يقولوا لا let's say when a woman fails يقول لك هي سقطت عشان هي ست. لكن when she succeeds يقول لك despite being a woman she's good. Something of course we never see with men. it puts more pressure on women and very bad social stigma. This is actually it's interesting. Networking for scientists, they will appreciate what networking means. We have to collaborate. We always have to share our data. We have to share our struggles with other professors to get input from others. فللأسف الرجالة بيعرفوا شطار في الموضوع ده أكتر. For example, this is my PI actually. ده الدكتور بتاعي في Harvard Medical School. One of the biggest scientists in the world يعني أو most renowned. هو بيحب الفيشنج جدا، فدايما لما يجي لنا بوست دوكس رجاله ياخدهم يعمل فيشنج. لما يجي لنا بروفيسورز انفايتد للديبارتمنت يدوا توكس بيروحوا فيشنج. طبعا if you're wondering about the lady she's his wife, she's not a professor. So دي احنا مش شطار فيها، ودي برضو بتقلل شويه قد ايه الwomen بيبقوا recognized في الساينس. So to wrap up يعني my potential solutions that might improve the problem is ensure women recognized and honored, encourage women to apply for posts and funds. يعني نحاول نزود السيلف كونفيدنس بتاعتهم. try to enable networking between women themselves. نعمل support groups نجمع الستات مع بعض عشان يشيروا الداتا او الشغل او whatever او collaboration او كده. برضو نحاول نريز الكونسبت of paternity leave rather than maternity leave. A man can take care of kids too. Also, we can try to help them by creating some prestigious part-time jobs for women. And let me share actually this nice lady I had the pleasure to meet. She's called Roberta Bondar. She's the first astronaut, Canadian astronaut, and she's a neuroscientist. And she went to the space many times and did some neuroscience research in the space. She's also a photographer. She has best-selling photo essay books. And she's a founder of a public school, and she's an environmentalist. And she's a founder of Roberta Bondar Foundation for Environment. And I'm sure you all, if you're familiar with this picture she took from space. She was the one who took this picture from space for Egypt and at night. So yeah, let me end my talk with my motto: science is too important to be left to men. And thank you all for attending. Thank you.
أنا صوتي عالي فبيوصل عادي. شكرا يا سارة. It's been exciting so far. آخر يعني last but definitely not least speaker معانا هي الدكتورة نجوى اللي زي كنت بتكلم هي لسه واصلة و thank you for being able to make it. دكتورة نجوى البدري هي من مدينة زويل للعلوم والتكنولوجيا، وهي التشير بتاع البايوميديكال ساينسز هناك، وقبل كده كانت في اليونيفرسيتي اوف ساوث فلوريدا، وكانت دايركتور هناك برضو. من ضمن الحاجات اللي كانت بتعملها هناك الدايركتور الومنز هيلث جراديويت اند اندر جراديويت بروجرامز. فعلشان احنا الوقت عندنا ضيق وعايزين نسيب وقت للاسئله، فانا هدي الميكروفون لدكتور نجوى.
أنا اسمي نجوى البدري، وأنا بروفيسور وتشير أوف بايوميديكال ساينس في جامعة زويل، وبرضه دايركتور أوف ذا سنتر أوف إكسلنس فور ستيم سيلز أند ريجنراتيف ميديسن في الجامعة. I'm very lucky to be here, and I would like very much to hear from you as I talk with you. I prepared a very short slide presentation, but because of the delay and all that, and I heard also my colleagues. ميكروفون عالي. كده أحسن. Okay, do I need this? Okay. So I heard my colleagues, they spoke very eloquently, and they said many of the points that are rehearsed through this session. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this topic. This topic is very important. I feel very passionate about it. أنا اتخرجت من الكولج اوف ميديسن من القصر العيني هنا، وسافرت سبت النيابة وسافرت على طول على أمريكا. عملت الدكتوراه بتاعتي هناك في ميديكال مايكروبيولوجي وإيميونولوجي، وبعدين ابتديت أشتغل في الجامعة. عملت أبحاث الأول، وبعدين دخلت في سلك الجامعة، وبعدين وصلت بقيت الدايركتور اوف ذا جراديويتس بروجرام في الكولج اوف ميديسن في بالذات في اسم النساء والولاده. وابتديت اشتغل ان انا اسس هناك بروجرام اسمه جندر ميديسن، اللي هو العلوم الخاصه بالبيولوجي الخاص بالنساء. البيولوجي الخاص بالنساء، لان مثلا لو سالت اي حد من حضراتكم وقلت لهم مثلا ضغطك كام، الضغط الطبيعي كام؟ 120/80 للراجل. اوكي، ضغط الست الطبيعي 110/70. فحاجه يعني دي حاجه من حاجات اللي هي في فروق كتيره ما بين الستات والرجاله على المستوى البيولوجي، حتى الدكاتره ما بيبقوش عارفينها. ليه؟ لان الدراسه الشغل كله اتعمل على الرجاله. تمام؟ الاناتومي اتعمل على الرجاله، ما كانوش الستات ممكن يتعمل عليهم اناتومي، لان يا اما عيب يا اما وات ايفر السورس از. لدرجه ان في ادويه في اتعملت ادويه لعلاج سرطان الثدي جربت على الرجال قبل ما تنزل في الماركت. اوكي، ففي الايشو ديب، فيري ديب. انا النهارده ابني لسه واصل في السبرينج بريك بتاعه، جاي من امريكا، هو بيدرس في بيركلي، وجاي قاعد معايا يومين، فانا قلت الحقه بسرعه واخده اوديه اسوان. فاحنا الصبح كنا في اسوان، كنا بنتفرج على المعابد، وشفت صوره اي بيت يو ما نقدرش نشوفها دلوقتي. شفت ملك وملكه ماسكين ايدين بعض وقاعدين جنب بعض بنفس الحجم وبنفس الطول، وكلهم اكسبوز زي بعض. فين دلوقتي في مصر او في امريكا او في اي بلد ممكن تشوفوا نفس المنظر؟ الكونسبت of equality of women being equal to men is is dwindling. It's not happening على كل المستويات. Women in science is just part of it. بالعكس يمكن women in science يمكن a little bit better than the rest. دلوقتي a woman's status is decided by how she لما بتمشي في الشارع. When you walk on the street, do you walk the same way? Do you get the same respect and space as a man gets? ولا you have to walk on the side and you have to be covered and you have to be shy? Otherwise, you're going to be harassed because you have taken more space than you are allowed. And this is the central issue, is that do you have the right to be there just full as a full equal person? And I think this is not happening so many areas. In Egypt, unfortunately, إن احنا نيجي لمصر اللي احنا الصبح شفناها women and men sitting next to each other with the same height and the same exposure, وبعدين أجي بعد الظهر ألاقي the number 2 country in the world بعد أفغانستان في sexual harassment, that you cannot even walk in the street without being harassed, and when you're harassed, it's you. Okay, it's you because you're either not covering your hair or not covering your body or walking in a certain way or doing something. It's just you're not getting the status. And this is, if this has been corrected, يبقى كل الحاجات التانية مش هتبقى corrected. It's how women are perceived, how women perceive themselves. Okay, what are the duties and responsibilities of women? Ain't you as a scientist, when you go home, a scientist has work to do, right? You have to look to write papers, you have to do research, you have to do. But when you go home and your husband who is a scientist goes home, what happens? The woman continues to work, right? Continues to do the work for the house, and then the work for the children, and then the work for the husband, right? Well, the husband doesn't have to do that. And then she says, I will be able to do it. I will be able to do it. Despite everything, I will be able to do it because I'm strong. But why are you not asking that there is equality? That's exactly the example اللي اتقال النهارده. Finland is forcing men to take paternity leave. Why? Why? To help his wife بس? And be responsible بس? Okay, imagine that you are you are the professor and you're hiring a woman and you're hiring a man, and both of them are going to get married. When you are in a society that knows that women is the one who is going to stay home and take care of the baby, or it may be the man who is going to stay home and take care of the baby, how is your gender bias going to change? Right? You're going to look both of them at the same. If you're going to discriminate, it's going to be equal discrimination, which is not discrimination, right? It's just you're going to have a baby, so there is equal. That's why they are forcing this, because this will make you more equal. So what women face are things that have to do with being a woman and then being a woman scientist. The challenges in Egypt are a combination of both. Being a woman makes you have less time and less space than a man to start with. So you are not starting at an equal, you don't have the same advantage because you are required to work more. So whatever you do, no matter what you do, you're still going to be working very hard to achieve the same. So it's not, so if you don't correct this issue, it's not going to be corrected. There are certain areas to start with. One of the places is the media. Look at the media and look how media portrays women. Do you see in the media, in the movies, women who are scientists and who look decent and very smart and they act well and they have good decisions? Or you see in the media women who are on each side of the horizon, either one who is completely covered and submissive, or someone who is basically a dancer who just, you know, that's because, but you don't see the woman who is smart and wise, and at the same time looks good and also dignified and respectful. So we need to ask to see more of this so that you will feel that this is true. We need role models. Okay, Dr. Magdi Yaoub was giving a lecture last week in Fizwil City, and he was talking that scientists don't have role models. When you think you want to be a woman scientist, who are you going to look up to? There is no one. Marie Curie, but Marie Curie is not a role model for most of our women. There are so many gaps, okay? Marie Curie is someone who is not attainable, right? Samira Musa, but when? That was like when? Samira Musa. See, you guys don't even know the names of so many great scientists that we have right now. In Egypt, you don't know them. Okay? Because they don't get the right exposure. And some of these reasons are just because scientists in general don't get right exposure, and other reason because there is a gender bias. Okay? There is a tendency to see women either conscious or subconscious. You don't see women in this role. So this is when women get harassed in the streets, it is not about sexual. This is not about someone who is sexually excited about you. It is about your place. It's about someone who doesn't see you as fitting in this place. This is not your place. You should get out of the way. Why are you out there? They even tell you straight, why are you out there? Right? You shouldn't be out there. You should be somewhere there. Doing what? Doing service. And if you allowed yourself to do that, it's going to be hard for you and for your partner to get rid of this role, because this role is very useful. You're doing a very useful role. So asking for equality is a very strong political movement. It's not easy. Okay? It is just like asking for liberation. It is not easy, because you have to believe in it first before you can ask for it. Now, being a woman scientist is another challenge. We live in Egypt. In Egypt, what is the percentage of the funds that goes into research in Egypt? Does anybody know? Of the gross average? Less than 1%, yes. Point 0.2 to 0.4%, okay, goes to research, compared to, look at Taiwan, 2%, that's 10 times, right? South Korea, that's Samsung, and we're all, talking about South Korea, 7%. Now, I'm not talking absolute figures, I'm talking about percentage of the national income, right? Which doesn't matter if you're poor or rich, it's still a percentage. So what's happening in the new constitution is that now, do you know how much now do we have for research? Did you guys say yes or no to the constitution? Did you read it? 2 to 4%, right? Research, scientific research, that's a great step. When I have, when STDF كانت بتدي 20 millions, and now they give 200 millions, that's substantial. That's something that we have to catch on. So how the country views scientific research is important. So I think it can get better. So it is not that women are not making it. As you all know, women make more than 50% of the graduates, and it's always women who are the top, right? الأولى is a girl, الأولى is a girl, is a girl. And there's always a justification, why is the top of the class is a girl? Not because she's very smart and hardworking, but because what? Yes, because الولد لعب. Here you go. Because boys go around and play. That's why they don't have time to study. But girls, they stay home and study. So there's always a negative, right? A negative thing to it. But it is, you don't say that, so they are smart. And we have in the fellows, you stay in the lab, we have most of our young teaching assistants are women. But most of our professors are men. So something happens when women start smart, hardworking, active, they don't make it to the top. Why? I see it myself. I see a woman coming to me and saying that, okay, there is, this train, you can go and have internship in a great university, 6 months, I cannot travel, okay? And if you can't travel, you cannot improve yourself, and you cannot be competitive later on. So what happens is that at this time, they prioritize, right? Marriage and having children and all that. And there is nothing wrong in marriage and having children and all that, but it's that you cannot do it all by yourself. That's why the best advice to you, if you want to succeed, you cannot make it without a partner who is fully committed to your success. Invested in your success as much as you are invested in his success. Because otherwise it's going to be very, very difficult trip. So these are just things that happen naturally, but there are some types of active discrimination, it happens. But if you don't focus on the active discrimination, you're not going to lose much, because if you work hard and you do the right thing, you're probably going to do well. So I don't think that if you go out with an attitude that, I'm being discriminated at, this is difficult and all that, that's going to be very, very, successful. Because it exists. But going with a negative mentality as opposed to going with, okay, what do I need to do and what will truly help me? Okay. Is going to be the most successful way to do it. Okay, I'll stop at this and I will welcome any questions with my colleagues.
شكرا يا دكتور. قبل ما نفتح الاسئله يعني للي عايز يسال، انا بس عايز اشكر كل اللي اتكلموا النهارده، ويعني علشان اجاوب على احد الاسئله اللي دكتور نجوى البدري كانت بتطرحها، هو مين الرول مودلز اللي ممكن يبصوا لها. فيعني انا am very proud to be on the panel مع 4 of what I think are definitely role models that بنات كتير وسيدات كتير ممكن يبصوا لهم لما يكونوا عايزين ياخدوا كارير في العلوم.
بصفاتكم طبعا مثل يحتذى به للرجال وللنساء على السواء. أحب أسأل دكتور نجوى ودكتور رانيا وطبعا الأخوات الموجودين بصفة خاصة عن إزاي قدروا يوفقوا ما بين العمل والالتزامات المنزلية، خصوصا عند وجود طفل في الأشهر الأولى. أنا عارف إن دي كارثة بالنسبة للرجالة أكتر من الستات أصلا. أنا عارف كويس إن الرجالة ما بيشوفوش النوم، فما بالك بالست. فإيه الحاجات اللي ممكن تشاركونا فيها وتنصحونا بيها للمرأة عموما، وطبعا للمرأة في المجال العلمي بشكل خاص؟
I can tell you my own experience in this. I was actually pretty lucky. I was a graduate student. I was doing my PhD and I started my master's degree and doing my PhD, and I'm a Canadian citizen, so I lived in Canada. Canada has an amazing system, it was unfortunate that Sarah did not have a chance to represent it. But I was a student. I only earned 800 Canadian dollars a month. And the tuition fees of the child care was 600. So what they do there is that they calculate the child care fees based on how much you earn. So I ended up only paying like $98 a month for and they had a daycare center where I was working. It was 9 to 5. I would drop off my son at the daycare, go to my classes, go to the lab, even sometimes go have lunch with him during his lunch break and my lunch break. So this worked really well, and I was very grateful for being in this system that fostered childcare. I didn't have a mother in Canada to take care of this, and I had a very, as actually Dr. Nagwa indicated, it's very important to have a partner that works with you. We were both graduate students. We went home, we cook together, we eat together, and each one of us studies, etc. So I don't think I would have been able to do it without that. That being said, when I then started my postdoc years, I moved to the US, and I was butchered. I'm sorry. Because the child care center at the Scripps Research Institute was for $1,200. Exactly. And who can afford that as a postdoc? And they don't have this as the Canadian system where you pay based on how much you earn. So it was basically impossible. I struggled a lot during my postdoc years maintaining this. And I don't think I was as productive as I was during my graduate years. So you juggle and you do the best you can.
I would report probably a similar experience. I was in the States when I got my first child, and it wasn't intended, so I was supposed to go to residency and doing my medical residency. And medical residency is not only demanding, it's like 24 hours in the States, in the United States. And my husband also was working on getting his residency, so what I've decided is that I'm going to postpone residency and joined a PhD program, which was a turning point in my life and something that I really never regretted. But at the same time, I was very busy with my daughter in the first year of my PhD program. My husband also decided to postpone his residency for a year for me to be able to do my first year of PhD. So if you do not have a I was very lucky, obviously, and this help still exists until today. This willingness to share the responsibilities and to share also the glory between the partners. If it didn't exist, it would have been very difficult. You can do it. I could have done it without his help, I think, but I would have suffered a lot. But I was lucky I could go home and sleep, and we will share house responsibilities and everything. And it was torture having a baby in the States because you have to pay everything out of pocket. You pay everything for the child care. You suffer, but you suffer by yourself is different from suffering with someone helping you and on your side. So I hope you all will be that lucky.
So both of you have already worked in Western countries and then came back to Egypt. So why did you decide to came back, although all are aware of the condition of women in Egypt? And do you find the same problems like in US and Canada as scientists, women in science, and in Egypt similar, or they are very different? Thank you.
There are things that are good in Egypt, worse in other countries, things that are good in other countries, worse in Egypt. You don't know it until you start going through the system, okay? But I can tell you that women's issues are worldwide, and probably with the same intensity. The expectation in Egypt is that a woman has to do everything, and women accept that. And they start to defend themselves, saying, but I can do it. I'm not going مش هأثر, okay? Which you have already assumed a lot of responsibilities. In the West, women don't assume this responsibility. They say that we have to work together. It doesn't mean that women there get the support that they need easily, not at all, okay? So I think that, no, in both countries there are difficulties. Why I decided to come back? If you know, I don't know, you probably have people in your family who have traveled and lived outside Egypt. You always want to come back to Egypt. There are things in Egypt that are not available anywhere in the world. The social life in Egypt is unsurpassed, and it's a very important part of your life. You feel happy, okay? Teaching to kids, to students in Egypt, it's very fulfilling. It's something that I felt when I heard about Zuweil City is going to start opening. I was very excited. I felt that this is just the right time to come back, and I was very, very lucky to come back and be able to serve here. And I came here, okay, there is a woman scientist who's coming from the States. When they're cutting the funding for research, it's cut badly there. Okay, I've been suffering for a long time to continuously get funding. And I come here and I apply to a grant and I receive a huge grant from Egypt. Okay, so you may say that, you know, there are lots of resources here. It just needs, if you have the same attitude and the same ability to live anywhere in the world and fight and survive, you'll be able to fight and survive here, because you always have to fight for survival, whether it's in the States or in here. But I think in this country, I'm very, very happy, and I feel that it's very satisfying to be with you, to talk to you, to be able to exchange ideas, and to be able to support women's issues, because this is something that I feel very passionate, as you can see, and I feel deeply about.
I actually really like your question, because when I was invited to give this talk, I thought one of the things I'd like to do is compare between my experience in North America and my experience in Egypt. But then I felt it's unfair. It's an unfair comparison. Thank you. Because, thanks. Yes, thanks. Okay. Because I came to Egypt as a professor. When I was actually in North America, I was a student. I was much younger than I am now. So the comparison is a bit unfair for me to say my experiences, but generally speaking, I consider my experience in Canada as a graduate student as extremely positive. My experience in the US was rather negative, especially when I started, and then after that it went okay. And in Egypt, like Dr. Negwa indicated, I actually moved here for family reasons. Everything in my life, I follow my family around. So my decision to go to Canada was because of my family. My decision to go to the US was because of my family. And my decision to move back to Egypt was actually temporarily, where I said, okay, I'm gonna work for a couple of years in Egypt, then I'm gonna go back to North America. And I came here, and I've been here for 8 years now. And what happened is that after I joined AUC, we got a $7 million grant, which is something my colleagues in the US didn't get. And I had amazing students. I mean, both Rihab and Sarah were my students, and I'm very proud of them. And it's really endearing to see the development of students, and this is something I see here. I see it much more here than I've seen it anywhere else. Now, as to the culture itself, I find Egypt, I wasn't raised here, but I'm an Egyptian. There's no question about it. I mean, شكلي وشعري وكل حاجة مصرية خالص. بس people here are so interesting, and life here is like a movie every single day. It's just driving to work, and it's so entertaining. I don't get as entertained. I spent the summer in Berlin last summer, and I have to spend this summer. It's not entertaining. You're bored. You're walking down, everything is flowing normal, and it's just, it gets boring. Here, you're totally stimulated. And obviously, like I said, I don't see harassment in Egypt as much. I've seen harassment in other places, more than I've seen in Egypt. But it also could be the age thing. I mean, I am not as young as I used to be 20 years ago. And the other thing is that whenever someone does something to me, I actually look at them and I'm very assertive, which is also something I didn't do when I was younger. And I just find that even people that you think could be rude to you, if you apologize and you're nice to them, they actually apologize back and they leave you alone. And it's much easier than I see people discussing it here. I love it.
Well, verbal harassment, but as you said, people's perception would
Yes.
you should stay at home or you should sacrifice for your family. I consider this kind of harassment.
Actually, okay, because I looked up what harassment means. I did my homework a couple of years ago when, and it turned out that harassment based on, I think it was the WHO that released what harassment entails, and you'd be surprised. I'm sure all women here get harassed 3 to 4 times a day. If you follow the guidelines of what harassment is, and that includes whistling, you know, whatever. So yes, this does happen. But maybe I do feel that you can isolate yourself. We don't have to. When I'm in the US, I ride public transportation. Here you have to ride in the female, like I sometimes take the metro back to Maadi, so it's an easy commute. But I don't find it as much drastic as people entail it, because I have seen really bad things in North America. I mean, really serious things right in front of my eyes, which was much worse than I've ever seen here. But again, it's just my personal opinion of this.
Okay, so if you want to keep women in science, you first have to admit that you want women to work. Because what you're going to have to do is things that people are going to see as very threatening if you don't admit that you want women to work. So for example, it was in Harvard, I think. It was a paper that was published about how women were promoting women in science. And there was a professor who was proposing, and she actually funded a fellowship to get house help. Okay? So this is a fellowship for women where they can apply for, compete for, and get money to hire someone to help them at home. Because there is genuine understanding to what women face, right? Why do you have to go home 4 o'clock? If you have to go home 4 o'clock because there is a lot of work to be done, then you need someone to help you. Then I'll give you money to do that, okay? If it's because your partner does not believe that you should stay after 4, then you have to address this issue, whether by funding research that will address this issue, and that's funding women's studies issues, okay? Or looking at this in a genuine way. So there has to be some kind of recognition that is respected, and people feel that, okay, I'm going to compete for something that's going to promote women in science. Because there is nothing wrong in promoting women in science or promoting women in any other field.
I kind of understood your question a bit differently, because it seemed to me what you were questioning is the science in the entire scientific community here. And I don't think that this is really the scope of what we're talking about here. So the fact that there are 44% of women regarding of the impact factors of the paper they publish it, et cetera, this is a different topic that maybe could be discussed at the different sessions. But the fact is, I mean, shown by Sarah. Sarah, where did you get this statistics from? That 44%. Okay. Mm-hmm. So did they calculate it based on women with PhDs or women who had academic jobs, or
Academic jobs
after
after PhD.
PhD?
No, the 45% were PhD holders.
Mm-hmm.
The 26% were the applicants for job later.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So the 44% represent that. Now what you're questioning is different, and then would require different calculations, etc. However, let me just tell you that now the impact factor of journals and all this is being questioned. Now how they look at things is through citations and other H-index, etc.
Yes, but it just gives you a direction. I mean, it is not so competitive now. I mean, you can say Nature 34 and like something below 1. Right. So it gives you an idea about the caliber of science.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I understood the question totally different from both of you. Yeah, I think his question, correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, no, correct me if I'm wrong. I think his question was, now there's lots of women in science because we publish in law journals, but after, yeah, there's no pressure, but when there's pressure, women will start to drop off the race, which I don't agree, because women, like, as if we're there because it's easy. No, I don't think so. I think even if it became harder, women will still be there. There will be no pressure for, like, the pressure will be all over the place for both men and women.
The pressure will require people to stay longer in the labs, like in mass spec.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so that would be,
and so that will definitely
yeah, yeah. yeah, it won't be like women in Egypt specific. It will be women everywhere. Like it's the same problem we're discussing, but like yeah, having more pressure, yeah, might affect the percentage of women. But yeah, everything will depend on the family. Yeah, okay. Yeah, this is the question. Like, we get more funds, so we should publish more, so people are expected to stay more, so women will start to drop from the race. Like, there'll be less women, right? Okay, so yeah, this is how I understood. Okay, thanks.
Do you want anyone want to add an extra comment or طيب اعتقد احنا عندنا وقت السؤال واحد كمان او ما عندناش قوي بس ممكن ناخد سؤال كمان معلش عشان يا دوبك عشان اتاخرنا حتى شويه.
هي وجهة نظر واتمنى البانل تعلق عليها. حاجة انتوا شايفينها إيجابية ان نسبة البنات في المجال الأكاديمي يعني عالية نسبيا بالمقارنة بالبلاد التانية اللي هي 44%. أنا مش شايفة ان ده نتيجة ان احنا يعني وضعنا أحسن شوية، لا، أنا شايفة ان ده ممكن يكون البنات أساسا بتعمل كده لانه مجال الصناعه اسوأ من المجال الاكاديمي. يعني مجال الصناعه انا بشتغل مثلا في الالكترونيكس، اعرف شركات من بابها ما بتعينش بنات. حاجه تانية برضو الضغط الاجتماعي بتاع انه انا لو بشتغل في شركه خاصه ورحت مثلا خلفت ولازم اسيب الشركه فهخسر الوظيفه بتاعتي. لا، لو اشتغلت في الأكاديمية اللي هي بتبقى غالبا حاجة حكومية، يعني احنا عندنا التعليم في مصر حكومي إلى حد كبير، أو حتى لو خاص بيبقى الوضع أحسن شوية، وإنه هلاقي فرصة إن أنا أخد الأجازة بتاعتي وأرجع تاني. يعني أنا مش شايفة إن وجود البنات في الأكاديمية أعلى من نسبتهم أعلى من البلاد التانية ده حاجة إيجابية، لا، هو جاي نتيجة سلبيات في الصناعة. شكرا.
أنا أشكرك على الملاحظة دي ملاحظة مهمة جدا، وفي ناس ما تاخدش بالها منها فعلا كتير. Actually كان في ترند كده، هم لاحظوا حاجة، إن مثلا عندك التيتشنج زمان كان البروفيسورز المدرسين في المدارس كانوا رجالة أغلبهم، وكان المرتبات عالية. أوكي، لما ابتدوا الستات يخشوا التيتشنج اندستري ابتدت المرتبات تقل، ونزح الرجالة بره وابتدت تظهر وظائف تانية. دلوقتي اللي انت هتشوفيه، اللي انت الكلام بتقوليه مظبوط جدا، ان بيجي لك حد في الاكاديميا شايفين ان فعلا الاكاديميا is a woman's field more why secure, low paid, the hours are reasonable. Okay, but the reality is to be competitive in the industry, you have to be able to be competitive in the industry, which means that you have to be able to spend long hours, right? Travel a lot, and you'll be competitive. So it is true that this is the reason why women are more in academia, and this is the reason why women are more in the teaching jobs, right? Even within academia, في industrial وفي teaching jobs are more of the women. So that's very true. But women have to look up to have to understand this, and you have to be ready to do it. If you are going to go to the industry, you have to be willing to spend the time and the effort and the hours, and you will be successful. It is not like يعني اسطمبة, yes, you're going to be this or that. No, you can cross the barrier, but you have to be willing to put the effort.
هو انا برضه كنت حابه اقول هي your observation is very true. يعني انا مثلا اول ما اتخرجنا من الكليه كل الناس كانها بالظبط زي ما بنخلص ثانويه عامه بندخل الكليه، الناس بتخلص كليه بتقدم ماسترز، يعني كانها حاجه يعني سواء they're interested في الساينس او حتى كانوا بيحبوا المذاكره او whatever like ما عندهم هي الفكره طب هنعمل ايه meanwhile نقدم ماسترز او كده. ففي في طبعا في بايس رهيب في البرسنتج اللي احنا عندنا في مصر، ان الناس actually مش interested في الساينس قد من انها ايه اي حاجه لحد ما نلاقي شغل. وفي ناس كتير جدا بتدروب في along the way طبعا unless they're really interested او they'll use whatever they're going to learn بعد كده في الشغل بتاعهم. بس it's a very good observation.
طيب للأسف احنا الوقت بتاعنا خلص. مرة تانية كنت حابب أشكركم أول حاجة على الحضور وعلى وجودكم معنا والتفاعل، وحابب أشكر المتحدثات معنا النهاردة. أنا بالنسبة لي البانل كانت اي اوبنر، يعني في حاجات كتير حتى أنا ما كنتش واخد بالي منها وأنا ما كنتش عارفها، فاعتقد ده في الاخر بالنسبه لي وانا ماشي هو ده المهم بالنسبه لي. وفي نفس الوقت كانت بالنسبه لي انا برضو انسبيريشنال، يعني انا سعيد ان انا اكون معاكم وسعيد ان انا اتعرفت عليكم، وشكرا ليكم وشكرا لوقتكم. و اتمنى ما نتعبكمش. لو اي حد يسال حاجه ممكن احنا يعني هنكون موجودين كمان 10 دقائق او ربع ساعه، لو حد عايز يتكلم مع حد 1 on 1 احنا يعني موجودين. ولو حد عايز يعرف اي حاجه اصلا عن نيتشر الطبقه العربيه او نيتشر ميدل ايست احنا برضو موجودين. وشكرا لكم.